From here, though, I mean, there's so much to be done. There's so much work that still remains. What do
Mhm.
y'all maybe hope or aspire to see in the next couple of years? I mean, we don't have to get into like prognosticating about particular elections or anything quite like that. But Laura, let me start with you. Is there anything that you are maybe hopeful as a ambition or a intention for the world at large as we continue to hopefully become a more sex positive, more accepting world?
Yeah, I think, because I do see us trending in a generally positive direction, my hope is really that that just kinda continues because like a steam train, right? We'll pick up more and more steam, and as long as nobody is getting too disheartened and we don't have massive amounts of people dropping out of the social activism pool, I really and just people living their genuine lives and not feeling like they need to hide themselves. Like, that alone is a form of activism, even though it may seem kind of arbitrary. It's huge. And so as long as we continue to empower people to do that, and as long as there's still voices out there, I tend to think it's trending toward the better. And I do see things now that are better now today than they were when I was a child, 20
Mhm.
years ago. So I think that um if I have a hope, it's really that the steam sort of picks up. That it doesn't keep going at such a slow roll, like 2 steps backward, 1 step forward, 3 steps forward, 5 steps backward. Like I really kind of hope that what's happening today will open enough people's eyes to the fact that they have to be participants in the political process and they have to be
Mm,
verbal about who they are and what they want. Otherwise, it's the vocal minority that's really going to take charge and take control because the rest of us are like, "Oh, my vote doesn't count." Right? So if I have one hope, it's that enough people are inspired by this really kind of horrible divide that we have
sure.
in our country. Especially like keeping it real on sexuality. We have a divide just on sexual related topics. If we can just keep it, to where more people are empowered and inspired to get out there and use their voice and to vote, that I think would pick up the steam a little bit faster.
Yeah, yeah, no, fair to say. I don't mean for this to be too much of a call out, but I had drinks with a handful of great people from this community, from this organization, people that
Mhm.
you, dear viewer, have like heard from and seen on camera. And as we were talking about, the efforts that we put into making the world a better place and the energy and the volunteering and all of this, I mentioned that there was like a local election coming up and it seemed to be
Mhm.
news to a lot of the people at the
Oh,
table.
no.
It's important to remember that like we don't just do this to talk. Like we want to actually do something, and voting is a huge part of doing something. Yes, there is a lot to be said about the American two-party system. There is a lot
Mm.
of good reason to feel frustrated and disenfranchised,
Yeah.
but your vote really can matter. Please, just goddamn do it. But Kara, the same question that I gave Laura. I mean, what are you maybe rooting for? What is the storyline or the hope that you have for the next couple of years of sex positivity?
Oh, man. Yeah, I hope that it continues to become, more mainstream and, kind of to get back, to your point about the politics of it again. I think we're hearing a lot of backlash right now of people arguing against, everything, whether it's
Mhm.
abortion or trans women in sports or contraception or, people being, out about whatever, kink or orientation that they have. We're having so much backlash against the positivity, but I think that if we keep pushing and making it more normal, that we'll just, the world will be a safer place for everyone, if we can get past this, angry kind of moralizing backlash against people just living their lives. And,
Mhm.
back to your point again about, yeah, it is politics. I think a lot of times people kind of frame these issues as moral and religious issues, and yes, there is a religious component to it for sure.
Hmm.
But I'm thinking about like Michel Foucault's book, The History of Sexuality, which,
Mhm.
he can be tough to read, but he sort of goes over this sort of genealogy of how we've talked about sex, and all it is power relations. It's a
Mm,
way of controlling people through discourse, through what they're allowed to say, what they're not allowed to say, who's forced to
Mhm.
say what, what are we interested in examining in people's lives and tell them they can and can't do. And it's not about sex, it's about power. And he kind of makes the point that you need to realize that that's what's happening, that a lot of these things are social constructs, and you're being made to feel and speak and act certain ways, that are, purportedly, moral or normal or, scientific, when in fact this is about controlling people, and controlling their bodies in particular. It kind of gets into this discourse on biopower, and how, the point of government has, recently become, and I'm describing Foucault, not saying my own politics, but
sure.
I'm saying, the point of government has basically become to turn people into baby making machines,
Mm,
increase the population, make it productive. And,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's necessarily the whole picture, but I think that is a part of the picture. And, realizing, hey, there's more to my life than being a baby making machine, is a good step forward.
yeah, no, that's a fair point, and there have been so many takes around the Roe decision, and I don't necessarily know that we need to pretend to have a unique perspective on any of that, but it is just worth taking a moment to reiterate that this is clearly not a issue of how do we protect children, right? There's so much that goes into the politics of that kind of thing, and we need to recognize that and play the game. We
Mhm,
need to be as dedicated to protecting the bodily autonomy of all people, but in particular people who can become pregnant.
Mhm.
And we need to have the same level of like fervor that the folks who actively campaigned against that for 50 years had. Coming from the evangelical church, it was constantly a topic of conversation, uh, overturning Roe. And so now that it's finally happened, I think that we need to be not just voting, not just volunteering, but be engaged in this huge and important process.
100%. I could not agree more. The same. I grew up in a similar background to you, and I still have family members that will talk about this. This is, the only thing that goes on their Facebook page. This is, just a part of their daily life, and they are fired up about it. And if they're attending church or something like that, they may be going every week and hearing from their spiritual leader how this is the number one thing that they need to be involved in. And, they're going out and getting involved. And they're a minority, but if they're more involved, then that's who's going to make the change and make it be the way they want. So yeah,
Mhm.
I completely agree that we have the numbers to make the world a better place and a safer place for everyone, but we have to make it important, to go out and do
Yes.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
let
need the
sex and
passion.
gender be
Yeah.
important in your
Yes.
Yes.
in the voting booth,
Yeah.
with your wallet, with all of these other aspects of your life.